Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the RoboCon 2019, on behalf of the Robot Framework Foundation. And as you may know, this is the second Robot Framework conference. And like last year was 2018, it was more like a trial and pilot. So how this concept of Robot Framework conference would work. And last year we had 250 participants, and this year over 300. So I say this is a really good trial, and we are definitely going to continue with that. Good. So I give a couple of words about organization behind the RoboCon, so Robot Framework Foundation. So this is the stuff what we do. So we want to keep the Robot Framework as the best automation solution on the market. Our message has changed a little bit there because last year it was a test automation solution, but we have now expanded also other automation areas. But there will be a talk about that later from Antti. And so what does this mean? That we are funding the development of the robot framework and also supporting the ecosystem. Another thing what we are doing, that we are fertilizing the community. I think this RoboCon is an excellent example about that. But we have also meetup groups and Slack channel. I will talk about meetup groups a little bit later more. But the question is, so Robot Framework Foundation, who we are? We are an association of companies. So at the moment number is 25. Wait a minute. 27. And I need to check it from the next slide. Yes, 27. And yes, companies are paying yearly fee, and this is where most of the money comes from to do these things what I mentioned in previous slides. But let's talk a little bit about the numbers. So what has happened during this year in the sense of Robot Framework Foundation? Pekka will talk about the tool itself a little bit later, and these are cumulative numbers. So last year we had only members from Finland. And this was our big agenda during the year 2018, that we want to be more international. And at the moment, we have member companies in 4 different countries. So Novicat Consulting was the first from Sweden. Is Henrik here? No? Okay, good. And second one was Impus from Deutschland. So René over here. And then Cisco system from United States. And I think that's pretty big news there. And if you see that last year it was 19 members, now it's 27, so 8 more members during 1 year. And I think it's a big growth there, if you think about percentage. And what we did with our money, so last year we had 2 releases, and now, like I said, this is cumulative numbers. So last year it was 3 releases, and 1 major release is this 3.1, also known as RPA release. So this is also a story that we want to expand the tool a little bit on the other way, not only test automation tool. And also we are supporting the ecosystem and, yes, these conferences. Good. Next thing, what I want to mention are the meetup groups. So this is from a Robot Framework Pro meetup.com Pro account, these red dots. And as you can see, there are not that many red dots. So please, if you think about that you want to have your own community in your city, just come to talk to me. And there's also a link, this presentation is coming to online later on, so you can check from the link how you can join actually, found your own meetup group. So we are paying the meetup.com fees, pizza and beers on you. So, next thing, how to help us to flourish. So like I said, the base thing where we get our money is the membership fees. So once a year. Once a year we are collecting from every member company. And this is now excellent moment that if your company name wasn't on the slide, then we are going to be, there's a booth over there. So me and Jani is going to be there and have a chat with us, and we tell more about how to join our wonderful foundation. Another thing, if you are individual, you can buy the gear from the shop. So there's a link over there. And there's a sample product also on the same booth. And also you can buy T-shirts during this event. And obviously participate in RoboCon. And not only as a participant, but also that we have good amount of partners which are located in that direction. Good. So this was about the Robot Framework Foundation. So a little bit about the practicalities. So basically, we are now 9 o'clock, so we are in that part. So coffee break is going to 10 o'clock. Then we are going to 11:30, there's going to be a lunch. And then 1:45, there's going to be break. And then 3 o'clock coffee break. And then there's going to 4:30 is going to be next break. And then there's going to be lightning talks and networking. I will talk about lightning talks a little bit later, not in this slot. And of course, our lovely friends from Vala are giving us an after party. And we are talking about that also a little bit later. So, a couple of words about the facilities. So, toilets are on the left-hand side when you go outside, and sponsor area in the other side of the building, and food will be served in the area just outside of this hall, and coffees will be in the partner area. And if you want to use VLAN, there's information about that, and please use Twitter. So hashtag RoboCon is our Twitter keyword. But without further ado, I will introduce lead developer of Robot Framework, Pekka Klärck, and he's going to talk about Robot Framework and tool itself. What are the plans now and what has been happening during last year? So please.
Thanks, Ismo, for introduction, and thank you for coming here. 300 people is an awesome number, especially considering that we got all that fresh snow, so that people traveling a bit further away here might have had some problems. But hey, great that you're all here. I was speaking also at RoboCon 2018, and in there, in the opening presentation, I was talking about Robot Framework history, how we basically got that far, how it happened that what happened all the development, and we got that far that there was the first RoboCon conference. So now, second conference, and what I'm now going to talk is what has happened since the last conference. What are the biggest news related to Robot Framework itself, about the community, and so on. Ismo already talked about foundation and to some extent the community as well. So my presentation is more about technical, about products and releases and so on. At the end, I'm also going to show you something that's forthcoming. What are the new big plans for this year? What's going to happen? But let's keep going. So obviously, definitely the biggest thing in the Robot Framework world was this Robot Framework 3.1 release. It's a great release in many ways. I'm going to explain some of the most important features shortly. But first of all, this was the first major release done since 2015 and was the first major release that was sponsored by Robot Framework Foundation. So big thanks for the foundation and all the foundation member companies. The old previous release was still done while Nokia Networks was kind of sponsoring the development, so that was that old. But this was first major release with the foundation backing, so awesome. Ismo already mentioned that this 3.1 has this robotic process automation stuff, and that was also then sponsored separately by a few companies, Siili, Knowit, Vala, Kentila, and Eficode. And I want to use this opportunity to thank those companies as well for their kind of dedicated sponsorship related to that. And most of these companies are also sponsors of this conference, so you can find them at the booth, and also other sponsors. So go check what they have, what they don't know about RPA and test automation and so on. Well, RPA has been mentioned so many times, so let's talk a bit more about that now. I'm not going to spend too much here because, well, we are going to hear about that topic more in Anti's presentation shortly. But I want to tell a bit more about how this functionality got into Robot Framework. So first of all, Robot Framework has been originally designed to be a test automation framework, and it's still a test automation framework. That's not changed. and it's going to be a test automation framework also in the future. But it's been with the test automation framework, you can automate things, and people have been automating kind of business processes using robot framework for a long time in their projects. And I've also heard people have been using robot framework to automate something like purchasing concert tickets and stuff like this, which is definitely not test automation, it's automation. But in that phase, that point, when you were doing automation like that, and you were automating something, but you weren't creating tests, so it was strange that you actually you need to create test cases here, and you get test logs and so on. So that's the big change in 3.1. In a sense, very simple change, that now, instead of having this kind of the familiar test cases header, you can have that kind of tasks header, and then create tasks that are automated exactly as test cases are created. So it's really kind of a simple change in a sense, but it makes a huge difference that if you're automating something, like, well, buying concert tickets, that you don't call those tests, you call them tasks. So that was a big thing, and we'll hear more about what this RPA acronym actually means then later. Another big change in this 3.1 release was automated argument conversion. That's a feature that most robot framework users perhaps don't themselves see so much, because all that this feature allows is something that test library developers have been able to do manually earlier. But now some of that work is automated, so creating libraries got easier. An example of this, what this automated conversion does is this test case here. It uses keyword that takes 2 arguments, 42 and false. When you would have a normal robot framework keyword, a method implemented in Python that gets those arguments, it's going to get those as strings, although they look like as a number and as a Boolean value. Earlier, what you needed to do then, if you wanted to interpret that 42 as actually a number, you needed to convert it to an integer. You somehow needed to consider that false string to be a false value as well, somewhat complicated. But now what you can do is that you can specify types when developing those keywords, and then the framework is going to do conversion automatically for you. There are various ways, few different ways to specify types. The most cleanest one, nicest one, is using Python 3 function annotation, so Python 3 typing support. Like here in this example, the keyword there in the bottom, the count argument is declared to have an integer type, and the case sensitivity is Boolean, so then the framework knows that and can convert these automatically. Really helps creating libraries. You don't need to think about stuff like this anymore, and it means also that you can take more and more ready-made Python code and use it with robot framework without thinking about such conversions. If you aren't fortunate enough to use Python 3 yet, then there's another way to declare types as well, but I really recommend you to start moving to Python 3 simply because during RoboCon 2020, Python Software Foundation was developing Python language. They have stopped support for Python 2, so that's going to be a big theme for in the robot framework community as well, is to migrate to Python 3 if you haven't already done it. Another big thing in robot framework 3.1 was that we enhanced test data syntax related to for loops. On the bottom there you can see the old loop, and the top one is what you can use nowadays. So less punctuation, no need to have that kind of colon, and especially no need to have those really annoying backslashes to tell which keywords belong to that block or the for loop body. Now, instead of those annoying backslashes, you need to use this end marker, but it's much more explicit and easier to type and so on. You will see at the end of this presentation why we wanted to move to this direction, but so I'm not going to get into details about that. But already now, as you can see, this is much, at least from my eye, it looks much better. And the important thing is that at the moment in 3.1, both of these work without any kind of deprecation warnings or anything, so you can safely migrate to 3.1. But in the future versions, this lower one, it's most likely going to be deprecated, most likely already in 3.2. Some other nice enhancement in Robot Framework 3.1. Named-only arguments, mostly, again, useful feature for test library developers. Resource files can nowadays use resource extension if you want to separate them from your test data or kind of a task data files, so containing tests or tasks. The robot extension can still be used in the future. That's not going to be changed, but this is more explicit. We fixed one major bug related to using timeouts. It was possible that under some circumstances, your output files were corrupted, so there might be similar problems still, but at least a lot of those problems should be now fixed. And altogether, close to 90 features were implemented or bugs fixed in that release. So, well, definitely a major release. So that was a big thing, but that was obviously not the only thing that happened in the Robot Framework community. There were many other things. SSH library got 3.0 release last spring, and that very importantly got Python 3 support. I really want to underline that you should be switching to Python 3. There were also some other SSH library releases. Then Selenium library got various releases. It had gotten the Python 3 support already earlier. Then there was releases at least of Jenkins plugin and Maven plugin. And Selenium library and Jenkins plugins, at least both of those, got some contributions during RoboCon 2018 sprints that were in those releases. So we are going to have sprints again tomorrow, development sprints. So if you want to contribute, if you're interested to do that, join us. I'm going to be there. Tatu from Selenium library is going to be there. There's going to be a White library at least, and Jupyter, and so on. We got a lot of news libraries as well. REST instance library for REST API testing was actually introduced here at RoboCon 2018. White library is a new thing, has been introduced here. There was a works about it. Hopefully there's going to be a lightning talk about that as well. It's for Windows UI testing. There's another library for Java UIs, and then also libraries for SAP and mainframes. SAP and mainframes may not be the kind of hippiest, coolest technologies that people want to work with or something like that, but of course they are important components, and if you need to do something like that, if you need to test those in your projects, having ready-made support for that is of course pretty awesome. There are many automation frameworks that can say that, okay, we support mainframes, or we support SAP. Of course we support web testing and all that, but a lot of very cool libraries there. Related to cool libraries, something that I've been following a little, I don't know much about this, is this DevOps with some kind of security in mind. And there have been various libraries related to that, Robot Framework libraries. So apparently it works pretty well in that domain. That's a domain I don't know, as I said, I don't know much. But if you're interested, go and Google DevSecOps and Robot Framework, and you should find something. Hopefully next year, some year, at RoboCon we have a presentation and hear more about what it is. New tooling. We get Jupyter plugin, Jupyter kernel, and that's something that also has kind of RoboCon history, because Asko Soukka at last year RoboCon sprints did the first prototypes related to that, the first demos, and that got so successful that now this year we have Asko with Nick presenting this, so that's something we are going to hear more during the conference. Cumulus CI got integration to Robot Framework, built-in integration, and if you wonder what's Cumulus CI, it's a CI kind of system for Salesforce systems. So that's pretty nice. That if you need to be if you are testing Salesforce applications somehow, there should be Robot Framework support built in there. That's nice. And also we may have a lightning talk related to that as well. So we'll see. Another project I want to mention is this Robot Framework Metrics, which is kind of a pretty cool looking dashboard that provides you metrics from test runs. This wasn't definitely kind of an exhaustive list of all new tools, new libraries, or enhanced tools and libraries that were during 2018. So I'm sure there have been others, but these were the ones that I found when I was going through the Twitter account and so on, looking at what actually happened last year. But what happens this year? well, this should happen. We are planning to add a long requested feature, native support in the robot framework test data for if-else structures. It has been asked for a long time, basically from the very, very beginning, but there has been at least 2 reasons why it hasn't been added earlier. One is that it's simply quite complicated. Our current test data parser would be horrible to enhance to support something like this, so that would be just a nightmare. Another reason is that in test automation, at least on a top level, in my opinion, you shouldn't have too much conditional logic, because it's quite weird if your test case is doing so that depending on one condition it does something, and depending on other condition is something else, because when you run that test, you don't know what it actually tested. So this is not a feature that, at least on test case top level, you should be using much. But on lower level, on user keywords and so on, definitely that conditional logic is useful, and Robot Framework has had run keyword if for a long time. But as everybody who has used that know that it's a bit cumbersome and definitely not not nice way to do conditional logic. But now the plan is to add it. Well, two main reasons why we are going to add it is that now Foundation has some money that it can actually sponsor that. We should have enough money for this project. And another reason is that although in test automation on kind of top level, conditional logic isn't such a good idea, in the new RPA world, it actually makes often sense. So that's why also in this example I have it as a task, not as a test. So in RPA, if you're automating a task, you can definitely have something, okay, if that's the situation, do this. If I have that system up, use that. If I don't, use the backup system or something like this, and that definitely makes sense there. One reason I've heard Robot Framework is considered a good tool for RPA is that with Robot Framework, when you execute these tasks, you get a nice audit trail from all the keywords that have been executed, and that's also then what you get from this kind of logic, that what was executed and what was not. In test automation, I would recommend that most of the time have the logic in libraries, but when you have a logic in a library inside your keyword, there you do that kind of logic. You don't see it. You don't get audit trail automatically, so that kind of helps. But I'm sure that's useful in test automation as well, and I'm sure that people using run keyword are happy when this is introduced. Well, it won't be introduced very soon. As I said, we have the old parser that is horrible, so our first task is going to be re-implement the current test data parser. That's what we are going to start. And that's actually something that already started, so me and then Janne Härkönen from Reactor, who has been working also in this old Nokia team with me for, I don't know, at least half a decade. We've been starting that project, and Janne has already been doing some prototype code work, and also that is some possible topic for lightning talks. That assuming that Janne made it here through the snow, we may hear something more about the technical stuff related to the new parser, what's been done and where it's going to. So the plan is that in Robot Framework 3.2 there would be a new parser, and then well, at that point not really new features. Just get it there and see what we break, and then have minor releases fixing that. Well, hopefully we don't break that much. But anyway, introduce the new parser in 3.2 during the spring, and then at the autumn, then hopefully have Robot Framework 3.3, where we can then utilize the new parser to add this new syntax, and also, of course, add the logic into the framework itself. So that's kind of the plan. Hopefully this year we would have this, and well, kind of deadline being RoboCon 2020, so that's hopefully back at that point, how it's implemented. Other things that are going to happen. Well, one idea that we've been talking a lot lately has been that it might be a good idea to create a dedicated Windows installer for Robot Framework that would be kind of dedicated for web testing, that would have a Selenium library with it, and possibly some REST libraries as well, and browser drivers and so on. That definitely would help getting started with Robot Framework, make it easier to try it out. If you want to try to use it for web testing at the moment, there's quite a lot to set up related to Selenium as well. So that's an idea. That if the Foundation has enough funding, then Foundation might be able to sponsor that, but I know that with the new parser project, I personally won't have time for that, but we'll see. There are other people who can do that. But that's an idea. That might happen, might not. If you are interested, come chat with us and we can talk. Then I'm sure that our awesome community will produce more tools, new tools, enhanced tools. But that's, of course, something I cannot really promise. So just kind of based on what we got last year, I expect that there's a lot of cool stuff happening this year as well. And well, one thing that I already kind of mentioned that is certain is Python 2 end of life. So that's going to happen. Robot Framework is going to support Python 2 most likely at least sometime also next year. We need to talk. That's kind of up to Foundation to decide how they want to spend the money. But well, once the language got its official support gone, then of course it's time to move on. So we'll move on from Python 2 at some point, possibly next year as well. But well, that's about it. And thank you.
So, any questions? Let's see. Do you want to try?
You try.
So hands up again. Oh, sorry. No, not even close.
How does this work? You can hear me, right?
Yeah, you speak, there's the X there, so you should have that close to your mouth and it should work. So.
Okay. The question I have is, the thing I feel lacking with Robot Framework is the proper IDE implementation, a good plugin. Is there any plans or thoughts on that?
Well, I totally agree with you that that's a big thing, and the new parser project is one of the reasons why we are doing that is that then that parser is going to be designed so that it's going to be easier to use by IDEs. Need to think that I haven't studied this topic too much yet, but apparently it's possible to do some kind of intelligence servers so that we could create a kind of a generic kind of a backend for completion and then syntax highlighting and so on. But that's kind of one of the big plans with the parser project, not only to make it easier to support these if-else structures, but also to make it then easier to create IDE plugins. But now that the parser project is in so early stages, I cannot make any kind of promises about IDE development. But that's again something, of course, we can hope that the community does something. But with the foundation, I would say that after this parser project, that might be the next thing for the foundation to sponsor, to spend more money on it. But foundation needs money for that, so it's going to be a big thing. But we know it's important and want to make it better as well.
By the way, this is missing a piece, this microphone, so if it's somewhere there, please go here.
Maybe you can just hand it over to Tatu, who had a question.
There.
Getting there dangerous.
So when Python 3 is only supported version, what happens to Python and Java support?
I don't know. That's of course one good reason. Python and IronPython both are still in Python 2, so that's one reason that we don't have a huge hurry to move away from Python 2. But we'll see. Python project has lately been getting a bit more active, and hopefully they're going to have a new release somewhat soon, because at the moment Python has issues with latest Java versions as well. So hopefully there's going to be, but that's going to be 2.7.2 or something like that. But we cannot wait too long. So that's the reason why we are not. That's one reason why for us it's not going to be that urgent to move away. But we definitely cannot wait that long with those projects. And if and when we move away from Python 2, then we are most likely going to be still supporting that version, whatever version that is, with minor releases if there are bugs and so on. So that if people are forced to use Python 2 or Python 2 or something, they can then keep using that older robot framework version. But we made the decision that this new parser support is going to be using Python 2 still, Python 2 style. It's going to be Python 2 compatible. That was actually a hard decision. We were really thinking that it would be so nice to switch to Python 3.6 and use f-strings and all the new cool features that would have allowed us to use nicer parser technology internally as well. But, well, in the end we decided Python 2 support is still so important for the community that we decided to go with that. But it's going to go away at some point, so don't trust that it will be there forever.
Oh, there. Too close.
Thank you. So, Wings from NTT Communications. So thank you very much for the presentations. So the question is that you mentioned about some change in the syntax, for example, for loop or something. So my question is that how about the own syntax? Will it be support and how long it will be support? And can we mix it together?
You mean this one?
Yes.
Yeah. So at the moment they both work without any kind of deprecation or warnings. It will kind of depend how fast we are going to get rid of this lower one. Will kind of depend to some extent how hard supporting that is going to be with the new parser. So that's kind of the major thing, because the new parser unfortunately needs to now still support both of these. And if it's really complicated, if it makes parser really horrible, then we want to probably get rid of it sooner. But it will happen so that in some major release, which may already be 3.2, the low one will be deprecated so that it works, but you'll get the warning that, hey, this is deprecated. So you can then see if you got warnings and then fix them, and then you can move forward so that in the next release, then it may be then gone for good. But in the current version, both work. And so once you get your test data, well, once you test it that you can use 3.1 and have migrated there, you can just, and when you know that you don't need to go back, you can start searching that you use this for with the colon and slowly start moving to the new syntax. But it's not going to go away that quickly. So we try to avoid backwards compatible changes. But here, I really, really like the new syntax more, and if you look at what we are planning to do in the future, if this syntax would be using colons and those annoying backslashes, this would look horrible. Now it looks okay to me, but it would be totally horrible with those backslashes there. So that's why we are moving to this syntax.
I think we are running out of time.
Yeah, well, thank you all, and well, I'm obviously here during the day. I'm going to actually, once this first presentation are going over, I'm going to host the rest of the remaining presentation. So if you have further questions, come chat with me. Ismo is there at the foundation booth also. If you're interested in that, then come chat with me. And thanks again.
Thank you.